Hey everyone, Epnol here, and welcome back to another episode of Commanding the Cheese. This week we'll be looking at slivers. Okay, starting off this episode, I hope you guys enjoyed the new jingle, by the way. I'd like to talk about slivers. Slivers are creatures that share a hive mind, which allows them to share abilities with other nearby slivers. Usually this also counts your opponent's slivers, but anyways, slivers are depicted kind of like a long snake-like creature with a head similar to an arrowhead. It has its body usually armored to some extent, has a tail, whip-like tail, has one arm usually that has a single long claw talon thingy, and well, each sliver has variations due to its abilities, but that's the basic of the slivers. Now moving on, I'd really like to talk about the legendary slivers because if you've noticed, this channel is about commander and you need the legendary sliver as your commander. So starting off, we'll start with the newest one we have, Sliver Legion. Legendary creature, sliver, all sliver creatures get +1/+1 for each other sliver in play. It is 5 mana of each color for 7/7 body. I personally really think this is just a powerhouse. Unlike the other Sliver legendaries, he doesn't really have any other special ability. He makes every other Sliver buff though, so that's really nice. And he also has the common Sliver mechanic where all other Slivers get the same ability, so he's just like a big fat Sliver. That makes all other Slivers fat. Not much to say about him. You probably want to play him as a finisher actually instead of your commander. That's the only suggestion I can give. Moving on though, we have Sliver Overlord. Sliver Overlord, just like the Legion, is also 5 mana 7/7, one of each color. His first ability is for 3 mana, search your library for a sliver, reveal that card, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. This is really good for EDH because, think about it, you only have one of each sliver in your whole deck, and the ability to search out any sliver you want is a big advantage. Sure, you might not be able to play it directly right away on that turn you search it out, but remember, you can search this at instant speed. In other words, when your opponent's ending his or her turn, search up a sliver and just play it on your turn. No worries. Not to mention, if your opponents play slivers, you can also use the second ability, 3, to gain control of target sliver, or if they try to steal your sliver, just gain control of it. So that's not too bad. And also, I believe a lot of people in EDH, they love playing Harmonic Sliver just because it's a good card. That's all I can say. It's a good card. And, well, worst comes to worst, take their Harmonic Sliver because, hey, it's harmonic. And it's a sliver. You want slivers. But, yeah, not much about it. The flavor text really does say it's the end of evolution. Kind of. Okay, not really. Anyways, moving on, we have the original mother of all the slivers, the Sliver Queen. The queen of all slivers. Again, like the other Sliver legendary, she's also a 5 mana 7/7. She's really old just from the Stronghold set, so you probably won't find a copy of her easily since she's also on the reserved list. Anyways, her ability is tap 2 mana, put a Sliver token into play. A 1/1 colorless Sliver token. So basically for 2 mana, you put a small sliver. Now that seems really bland, but if you think about it, that 1 mana sliver is actually a pretty big creature if you've been playing your sliver deck correctly. I mean, just with the other slivers, it'll get tons of bonuses ranging from a power bonus, a toughness bonus, double strike, flying, name all abilities you can find on slivers. So that's actually not bad. Usually for Commander, I strongly recommend either Sliver Queen or Sliver Overlord, depending on your playstyle. Sliver Queen is kind of a swarm with slivers playstyle, I guess, and Sliver Overlord himself is kind of, I don't know what you call him. He's kind of just a good card to help your Sliver engine go up. Sliver Legion is your powerhouse that just rams into the opponent, so yeah, all three Sliver legendaries aren't too bad, but aren't that great either. They kind of also work with each other, so if you can get more than one into your total EDH deck, that'd be really nice. Personally, my favorite out of these three would be Sliver Queen, just because she's the queen. Okay, no, not really. It's because she puts out 1/1 guys, and I really just like how those 1/1 guys seem weak, but when you add it up to the other Sliver release, it's really strong. Something you might have to note, take note of is that, well, obviously, Sliver decks are going to be vulnerable to field wipes, creature wipes, so be careful. Anyways, moving on to the Slivers.
Okay, gang, so hold on tight before we go on to the M14 slivers that I'd like to introduce that could possibly be useful in your EDH. Before we go too far, I'd like to introduce Corona, False God. Now you might be thinking, what? That's not Sliver. She's not a Sliver, but she could possibly be your commander. First of all, Corona is 6 mana, green, red, black, blue, white, and one of any color. She's a 5/5. You're thinking, okay, that's weaker than all other slivers. She has haste, which is pretty cool for a commander, I guess. She also has, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player untaps Corona False God and gains control of it. There you'll be thinking, why am I giving other players Corona? However, her last ability is what's important. Whenever Corona attacks, creatures of the type of your choice gets +3/+3 until end of turn. This is a very interesting ability because usually in commander decks, no one is playing tribal. There are a few circumstances where there are people playing tribal, but given the case that usually comes around, most people don't play tribal. In other words, since you are a sliver deck, this could be your advantage. Maybe you don't want to play her as your commander, but you could possibly also use her in the deck, just because all your slivers get +3/+3. Heck, why not? That's like suddenly everyone gets a giant growth. Also, since people like getting +3/+3, since you don't have to pay mana for it, it's just there, it might also allow you to make some allies in the game because you're like, hey, I'm done using Corona this turn. You can have her next turn, use it, and later return to me. Not bad. So, if you can somehow get an ally to help you and you can share Corona somehow, that might be interesting. It's a really more sociable play with Corona, I guess you could say. So, I hope you guys could also consider using her in your sliver deck. Yep. So afterwards, let's move on to the M14 slivers. Unlike their previous appearances, these ones are more metallic-like. You could kind of say Phyrexian-like. They are more humanoid usually, or beast in some form or the other. They seem larger to their surroundings. I could be wrong, but that's the case for me. They still retain some of the original looks, so these could possibly be the original slivers, but we will never know until Wizards tells us something. If I'm missing something, maybe someone comment below. I'm sorry about that. Anyways, the individual slivers. First off, we have Battle Sliver. Sliver creatures you can control get +2/+0. He's personally a 3/3 for 4 generic mana and 1 red. So basically, he comes into play as a 5/3 creature. Not much to get excited about this guy, except he'll add a beating to your deck. Next one I'm really excited about, Blur Sliver. If you've ever played a Sliver deck, you probably know there's like this one other red Sliver in the past that also gives gives all Slivers haste. Well, this guy gives only creatures you have haste, so if you're playing a Sliver deck, this will be a huge advantage to you, so even if your opponent is not playing Slivers, because first of all, you'll have 2 Slivers that can give haste in your deck, which usually you want, because Slivers basically means if you're playing Slivers, you want to keep on playing Slivers and just swarm your opponent with Slivers. So that's already a good addition, since now your Slivers can attack the first turn they come in. Now the next best part is, if you're up against another Sliver deck, basically their Slivers won't have haste, so you don't have to worry as much about them swarming you as fast as you can swarm them, considering you are still on top of the mana curve. Next, we have Bone Sky Sliver. I cannot stress how important this guy is for a Sliver deck that plays white. Okay, usually you'll be playing white if you're in EDH, but if you're not, still, he's important. Sliver creatures you control have double strike. So, not only does your opponent not get a double strike, but all your guys get double strike, and double strike honestly is a pretty good ability in my opinion. If you don't think so, up to you, but personally I'd love to play Bone Sky Sliver. Next, Gale Rider Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have flying. You might be thinking, okay, so why Gale Rider Sliver? It just gives everyone flying. The thing is, in a deck of 99 cards, you're not going to usually have all creatures with flying. This allows you to swarm your opponent even better, so definitely play Gale Rider Sliver if you can. Plus, on the upside, it's 1 mana, 1/1. That low of a mana cost, and even though it's a 1/1, but being able to be beefed up by other Slivers and also beef up other Slivers by making them kind of pseudo unblockable, that is really powerful in EDH. So you definitely want a copy of Gale Rider Sliver in your deck if you're playing a Sliver EDH. Ground Shaker Sliver. He's a big fatty, 7 mana, 5/5. All Sliver creatures you control have trample. He seems really bland and bad just being played by himself, but if you consider how Slivers are being played, which you probably have a good idea of if you listen to the rest of this video, he's actually pretty good. Sure, 7 mana might be a bit too high, but I think he makes up for it. Now that your Slivers have trample, you can once again easily swarm your opponent, because even if they try chump blocking your creatures, guess what? The damage is getting through, and that's what you want in a Sliver deck. Mana Weft Sliver. 2 mana for 1/1. I think there was another Sliver that was similar to him. I don't remember the name. The name's down here. Anyways, Sliver creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. This is great for a Sliver deck, considering you're playing 5 colors usually in EDH. If you're going for Slivers, basically Mana Weft Sliver says, hey, take 1 more mana. So all your Slivers not only become mana engines, they also help you get out whoever your general is, be it Sliver Overlord, Sliver Legion, Sliver Queen, Corona, whatever. You are able to use your Slivers as a mana base to get your commander out. Plus, even if you're not running Slivers, if you run a few Slivers in your EDH, you might just want to consider him, and heck, even if you're not playing Slivers, you might just want to consider him. He's technically a Birds of Paradise, except for 1 mana higher, and doesn't have flying. But still, it's a pretty cool card. I wouldn't turn him down, even if I weren't running a Sliver deck. Mechanic Sliver. Now this guy means business. For 6 mana, you get a 6/6 creature in return. That's good. Like, really good. Plus, he also gives everyone else +3/+3. It's kind of like a Corona. So, Mechanic Sliver makes everyone Corona-like, and you guys swing over for a lot of damage. That's all I can say. Plus, your Slivers aren't going to be burned that easily after he comes into play, so personally, I really love Mechanic Sliver just as big fatties throw in. And if you're playing Slivers, you can throw them in. Everyone gets fat, everyone's buff. Time to charge in. Predatory Sliver. Sliver creatures you control get +1/+1. Yeah, he's like a smaller Megantic Sliver. You can play him definitely. He's after Meganic Sliver, he kind of looks weak, but considering his low mana cost, you usually want to play him because your Slivers are probably going to be targeted by people at the beginning of the game, considering they don't want you to grow your Slivers. So you usually want to play him, somehow protect your Slivers, make sure they don't attack you, or they don't try to burn you. Sure, you can't evade instant kill spells like Doomblade and stuff, but at least you're buffer to some extent. Plus, they'd have to waste a kill spell to kill him if they want to burn some other things, so heck, why not? Sentinel Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have vigilance. I can't really stress much about vigilance except that it's kind of like a offensive and defensive gameplay at the same time. Basically, attacking doesn't cause you to tap, so you attack them, you don't tap, you get to block. Not much. That's all I can say. For a 2 mana 2/2 body, it's good, I guess. Can't say much about it. Next one we have an Artifact Sliver, which I believe there was only one other artifact. Oh no, there are two other ones, I believe. Metallic Sliver from Tempest, and I think it was called Venser Sliver. That was also another artifact sliver, which was really high mana cost just for a 3/3 sliver. Metallic Sliver was 1 mana 1/1, which was really cheap and really good for a sliver deck because you'd say, hey, 1 mana, hey, this guy has all abilities of all my other slivers. So I'd play a Metallic Sliver before Venser Sliver. But anyways, back onto Sliver Construct. 3 mana for a 2/2, not too bad, not too great either. He doesn't have any of his own abilities, so he's kind of your like, hey, I want this guy just to have all other abilities even though he's abilityless. Maybe not your first pick, but one of your final picks if you think you might have some problems on mana base. Since he's an artifact, you can pay for him using any other color. Next one, we have Steelform Sliver. Despite his name, he is not an artifact creature. Keep that in mind. Anyways, Sliver creatures you control cut +0/+1. He's one of the more defensive slivers. Raises toughness. I can't really say much about him. So let's move on to the next one. Striking Sliver. Sliver creatures you control first strike, kind of like the double strike guy, which was Bone Sky Sliver. But anyways, giving everything first strike allows your creatures to be a more successful attacker. That's all I can say. 1 mana 1/1 first strike. Not too bad as a 1/1 creature. Supposing that he does get buffed up later, so you'll be fine, I think, if you play him. Siphon Sliver, the black rare sliver. Sliver creatures you control have lifelink. I think he's not that great of a card in my opinion, but you definitely want to use him supposing you're worried about life, because usually people, once they start seeing you build up a field, they'll start attacking you one way or other, and if they're somehow making you lose life, you'll want to have lifelink on your slivers to gain back the life. For 3 mana 2/2 body, he's not that great, but again, the lifelink. If you really need that life, he's the sliver to play. Last but not least, we have Thorncaster Sliver, the red rare sliver of M14. 5 mana for 2/2. Yeah, that sounds really bad, but when you consider his ability, it's not that bad. Sliver creatures you control have, whenever this creature attacks, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. In other words, every time one of your Sliver attacks, no matter how big it is, it's going to deal 1 damage. You can really use this as an efficient battle plan. You can burn your opponent's creatures, make them smaller so they might be afraid to block if they really want to keep the creature. You can burn your opponent to deal more damage so you can kill them faster. There are a lot of ways that you could use this ability, supposing that all your Slivers also get this, which is, in all honesty, really awesome. I can't really say much about him except that's what he does. And that'll wrap it up for the Slivers of M14. Hope to see you guys next week.